Works by some of the most influential artists in American history came on display in United States post offices beginning August 27, 1998, when a pane of 20 postage stamps celebrating 4 centuries of American art was officially issued. The pane of stamps includes works by Grant Wood, Winslow Homer, and Mary Cassatt, among others. Deborah K. Wilhite, the Postal Service's Senior Vice President, Government Relations, was joined by Virginia Nowelke, chairperson of the Citizens Stamp Advisory Committee, to dedicate the stamps. 80 million of the 4 centuries of American art stamps have been printed and became available at post offices nationwide on August 28th. These stamps are the latest in the Postal Service's popular Classic Collection, a format featuring a collector sheet of 20 colorful designs with descriptive text on the reverse side of each stamp. Previous classic collections centered on themes of legends of the West, the Civil War, comic strip classics, and classic American aircraft. Presenting a mix of style and subject matter, the 20 works featured on the 4 centuries of American art pane of stamps come from museums and collections across the country. The following are featured. It is deemed the first portrait print made in British colonial America and a rare surviving example of early American graphic art. Only a few original impressions are known to exist, approximately 5 or 6, held in institutions like the Princeton University Library and the Massachusetts Historical Society. John Foster's portrait of Richard Mather, (1670), is a seminal piece of American art, recognized as the earliest surviving portrait print produced in New England. This woodcut, created by Boston's first printer, depicts the prominent Puritan clergyman with a stern, detailed demeanor, marking a crucial early example of colonial American art. Often hailed as the finest American painting of the 17th century, Mrs. Elizabeth Freke and Baby Mary is a masterpiece of the Freke limner, an anonymous artist active in Boston. The painting captures a moment of peak prosperity for the family, but tragedy followed quickly. Shortly after the portrait was updated in 1674, John Freke, Elizabeth's husband, was killed in a freak accident when a ship exploded in Boston Harbor. Elizabeth was left a widow with 8 children. She would eventually marry again and live to the age of 77. If Mrs. Elizabeth Freke is the queen of 17th century American art, Girl in Red Dress with Cat and Dog, 1830 to 1835, is the undisputed icon of the 19th century folk tradition, painted by Ammi Phillips, one of the most prolific itinerant painters in American history. It is a masterclass in bold color and geometric simplicity. Today, this painting is considered the Mona Lisa of American folk art. It represents a uniquely American moment where art wasn't just for the aristocracy in Europe, but for the farmers and merchants of the New England countryside who wanted to immortalize their families in bold, beautiful color. If the previous 2 paintings were about status and folk tradition, Rubens' Peel with a Geranium, 1801, is about the Enlightenment. It is widely considered one of the most significant American portraits because it merges art with the burgeoning world of natural science. This painting marked a shift in American portraiture. While earlier colonial works focused on showing off lace and land to prove wealth, the Peel brothers were showing off intellect and curiosity. While the previous portraits focused on humans, long-billed curlew, plate 231 of the Birds of America, 1834, is a portrait of a species. It captures the intersection of high art, obsessive naturalism, and a uniquely American landscape. Today, this plate serves as a bittersweet historical record. While long-billed curlews still exist, they no longer frequent the Charleston marshes in the massive numbers Audubon witnessed. The painting preserves a version of the American coastline that was wild, loud, and teeming with life before the era of heavy coastal development. Moving from the salt marshes of South Carolina to the Big Muddy, Boatmen on the Missouri, 1846, is a quintessential example of American luminism and genre painting. There is a layer of nostalgia here. By the time Bingham painted this, steamboats were rapidly making flatboats obsolete. Like many of the artists we've discussed, Bingham was documenting a slice of American life that he knew was destined to disappear. If the previous paintings were about the people and the industry of America, Kindred Spirits, 1849, is the ultimate tribute to the American landscape as a spiritual cathedral. It is perhaps the most famous work of the Hudson River School. In the painting, the two men are not conquering the mountain. They are standing on a rocky outcrop, dwarfed by the scale of the gorge. This reflects the sublime, the feeling of being tiny and insignificant in the face of nature's grandeur. We move now to a landmark piece of American art history. The Westwood Children, also from 1807, is one of the most celebrated works by Joshua Johnson, also spelled Johnston, who is recognized as the first professional African-American painter to find success in the United States. By the time Johnson died, around 1824, he had created a body of work that proved an African-American artist could compete at the highest levels of the profession in a slave-holding society. The Westwood Children remains a testament to his skill in capturing the quiet, orderly life of the early American Republic. We move from the outdoor Kindred Spirits to the quiet, dusty world of the trompe l'œil, French for fool the eye. William Michael Harnett's Music and Literature, 1878, is a masterclass in hyper-realistic still life, where the goal isn't just to paint objects, but to trick the viewer into thinking they could reach out and touch them. Harnett's skill was actually too good for his own safety. He was famous for painting $5 bill so realistically that he was actually arrested by the Secret Service for counterfeiting. They warned him that painting money, even as art, was illegal. He shifted his focus to objects like the ones in music and literature to avoid more jail time, though he continued to hide small visual jokes in his work. We leave the quiet library of William Harnett and head out to the cold, dangerous waters of the North Atlantic. The Fog Warning, 1885, is one of Winslow Homer's most dramatic sea tales and a pinnacle of American realism. This painting depicts the life of the halibut fishermen of the Grand Banks. It was a brutal profession. These men would leave the main schooner in tiny dories, like the one pictured, to fish with long lines. If a storm or fog rolled in, many never found their way back. Homer's painting was a tribute to their courage and the precariousness of their lives. The White Cloud, head chief of the Iowas, 1844-1845, is one of the most powerful portraits from George Catlin's Indian Gallery, a massive collection of paintings intended to document indigenous cultures that Catlin believed were vanishing. Like many Europeans of his time, Catlin wrongly believed that Native Americans were destined to go extinct due to Western expansion. While his paintings preserved a visual record, his perspective was often seen as salvage ethnography, viewing the subjects as relics of the past rather than living, evolving cultures. If the Hudson River School, like Asher B. Durand, was the Old Testament of American landscape painting, Thomas Moran and his contemporaries were the New Testament, focusing on the staggering alien beauty of the American West. Cliffs of Green River, 1874, is a hallmark of this era, blending topographical accuracy with a dreamy, golden light. Interestingly, Moran chose to paint the Green River as a pristine wilderness, but by 1874, the Transcontinental Railroad ran right through this area. There was a bustling town, a bridge, and a train station very close to where Moran sat to sketch. While Thomas Moran was painting the West as a golden, eternal Eden, Albert Bierstadt was capturing its closing door. The Last of the Buffalo, 1888, is a colossal, tragic masterpiece that serves as both a historical record and a dramatic myth. This painting has a famous, stinging backstory. Bierstadt submitted it to the American Selection Committee for the 1889 Paris Exposition. They rejected it. The committee claimed it was too large and that its style was out of date. But the real reason was likely more uncomfortable. America wanted to present itself to the world as a modern, industrial power. If the Hudson River School had a superstar, it was Frederick Edwin Church. And if that superstar had a blockbuster movie, it was Niagara, 1857. When this painting first debuted, it was a genuine cultural phenomenon. Thousands of people paid 25 cents each just to stand in a dark room and stare at it. Church was a student of Thomas Cole, but he replaced Cole's moody allegories with scientific precision. He visited the falls several times, making dozens of pencil and oil sketches. He studied the physics of water, how it curls, how the foam forms lace patterns, and how the green heart of the falls remains translucent even as it crashes. We move from the thunderous masculine power of Frederick Edwin Church's Niagara to the quiet, radical intimacy of Mary Cassatt. While her male contemporaries were painting the Great American West, Cassatt, the only American artist to officially exhibit with the French Impressionists, was revolutionizing how we see the Great American interior. Breakfast in Bed, 1897, is one of her most tender and psychologically complex works. Cassatt was a trailblazer. Born in Pennsylvania, she moved to Paris and befriended Edgar Degas. Because she was a woman, she wasn't allowed to frequent the cafes and bars where the male impressionists hung out. Instead of letting this limit her, she turned her limitations into her greatest strength. She documented the private, domestic lives of women. We've moved from the 19th century wilderness into the 20th century city. If Mary Cassatt's Breakfast in Bed was about the warmth of human connection, Edward Hopper's Nighthawks, 1942, is its polar opposite, the definitive portrait of urban isolation. Edward Hopper's Nighthawks, 1942, is an iconic oil painting portraying four figures in a brightly lit, all-night diner on a desolate, dark New York City street corner. Housed at the Art Institute of Chicago, this masterpiece of American modernism captures deep feelings of loneliness, alienation, and urban isolation during wartime. We have reached the most parodied, recognized, and debated painting in the history of American art. American Gothic, 1930, by Grant Wood, is the ultimate visual shorthand for the American Midwest, but its meaning has shifted radically over the last century. Grant Wood's American Gothic, 1930, is a famous oil painting featuring a stern farming couple standing before an Iowa cottage, symbolizing rural American values during the Great Depression. The iconic, widely parodied work, housed at the Art Institute of Chicago, uses sharp, regionalist style to portray resilience, posing as a mix of satire and tribute. Charles Sheeler's Two Against the White, 1957, is a tempera, onboard painting, 14:7 8 and 18 inches, that embodies the American precisionist style, showcasing a clean, hard-edged, and almost photographic depiction of everyday objects, likely including Shaker furniture elements. As an award-winning entry in the International Hallmark Art Awards, it exemplifies his late-career focus on structured, simplistic, and bright interiors. To understand Two Against the White, 1954, we have to look at Charles Sheeler not just as a painter, but as a precisionist. By the 1950s, Sheeler had moved away from his earlier, almost photographic realism and began experimenting with a style that felt more like an X-ray of the modern world. we have arrived at the high water mark of abstract expressionism. After the industrial precision of Charles Sheeler, Franz Klein's Mahoning, 1956, feels like a controlled explosion. It strips away the silos, the faces, and the landscapes to focus on the raw power of the gesture. Franz Klein's Mahoning, 1956, is a monumental 80 by 100-inch abstract expressionist oil and paper on canvas painting, featuring bold black enamel strokes against a white background. Held at the Whitney Museum of American Art, it represents a planned action painting based on small phone book sketches, evoking industrial, structural forms. If Franz Klein's Mahoning was a scream of industrial energy, Mark Rothko represents the profound, vibrating silence of the human spirit in his color-field paintings, a style that moved away from action toward contemplation. The 1998 Four Centuries of American Art series, which we've referenced throughout this tour, from the Frackie Limner to American Gothic, included Rothko to acknowledge that by the mid-20th century, the center of the art world had officially moved from Paris to New York. Rothko's inclusion was a statement that American art had evolved from documenting the physical land, like Moran and church, to exploring the infinite landscape of the human subconscious. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.